So welcome to SMART Recovery webinar. We titled this Building Confidence as a Facilitator. It was just an ongoing kind of request off the back of training. Sometimes just that confidence is a big barrier that can sometimes help get in the way of people developing. Now, I've got to be honest, there is nothing extremely new in this presentation. It's probably stuff you heard in training, but I think it's important to go over some things again. So we will have a period where I'm literally just going through some the main topic agendas around these points. So building confidence through program knowledge, motivational interviewing skills, using the CBT and the tools fluently, developing assertive communication skills, and setting strong boundaries. And after probably 20-25 minutes, we will go into a Q&A session with Josette Freeman, who pretty much is the person responsible for establishing SMART Recovery in Australia. So I thought it was a good opportunity to get her involved. So she will be joining us at some point later on. And what I will do ask you between now and maybe the next 15 minutes or so, down the chat box function on the right hand side, you can open that. And please just type in some questions that you'd like for me to pose to Josette, anything around building confidence or experiences that she's found to help her really develop into one of the most experienced facilitators in all of Australia, really. So please, can you do that? If not, I'll make the Q&A session quite short, but I do have some topics that I can get some insights from her if not. So if you wanted to ask a question from Josette Freeman, please type that into the chat box as soon as you can, and we will come back to that after the presentation. I do have some notes here, so if I'm looking off into the sunset, well, it's actually cloudy here in Sydney, you'll know that I'm just referring to some notes. So I guess looking at program knowledge, knowing and being confident in anything is key. So like doing anything for the first time, or feeling a lack of confidence in doing something that doesn't come natural, it can be challenging. But as we know, the times we learn the most is when we tend to be under pressure. Under pressure and experience these feelings, and that's tends to we can find happen. I know for myself, when things I do are too easy, I never really find my true capacity or my ability in regards to developing certain skills. As humans, we are programmed to not want to or to avoid pain or discomfort. Finding ourselves in uncomfortable situations, we tend to revert back to protection or safety mode. Knowing what we're delivering, the topic or program is obviously vital. We've all completed the training, but as you would have experienced, you may have felt it would be good to do a little bit more practice time or more days training. I think normally we had a half day, then it got extended to a full day, and now it's 2 days training, and I've still had people say, can we do another one? But it's more about getting out there, really. This is, I think, is based on more confident in their own skills and ability to practice more. How many people out there have trained as a counsellor or a clinician and feel when they've actually left the classroom after their uni, they're faced with clients for the first time, and thoughts go through your head like, I'm going to get exposed. I don't know what I'm doing, or I've completely forgotten everything I've trained in, and you feel like people are going to sit there thinking you're a fraud, And I think that's sometimes natural when things have been done for the first few times, or you're trying to build more confidence around that. I find the majority of times, and stress and anxiety we put on ourselves, it really never comes to fruition. The anticipation of doing something might really ends up being what the actual reality is in the situation. We've just wasted all that energy, have allowed the crippling fear to get in the way of us growing and experiencing certain things. So remember, building confidence is a slow process sometimes. Go easy on yourself, especially in the first year of being a facilitator. I guess remembering the tools and the training, you should have a facilitator's manual. It's important to know that back to front. And I know, like, a lot of training material probably stashed under your bed somewhere, or You might not even know where it is. Do you know where your facilitator manual was that you got at training? It's just curious. For me, starting out, that's something I just read back to front. I had it just at the forefront of my memory, forefront of my mind all the time. Please read this, please use it, and be as familiar as you can with what's in it. If you're able to recall information and the content back to front, as I said, it will equip you best with the principles, the theories of everything we're doing. Don't just read it through, consider applying and testing it out as well. Like, I can read a book and it means really nothing until I say, okay, how can I go out and test those skills out, just in day-to-day life as well as your clinical work maybe that you're involved in. Do it in your one-to-one meetings, do it with your family, with your friends, asking certain types of questions. You know, it's essential for fluid, cohesive skills and to get a cohesive, fluid meeting. It encourages and develops an environment of change and engages participants to as effectively really as we can. I found the more familiar I am with the program, the structure, the techniques, the tools, I end up bringing it into my daily life, and that was evident when I sat down with my wife a few months ago just to plan our week with the family, and she was like, "You're doing SMART Recovery at the minute, aren't you?" I'm like, "You know, you're right." And I think because I was so familiar with it, it just becomes second nature. But really, isn't that what we're trying to help the participants do? We're trying to get them to be so familiar with the concepts and philosophy and the theories that are within SMART, to the point where they go out there and they practice this on a day-to-day basis where it's not even conscious. That becomes your conditioned response, your conditioned behaviour, rather than that maladaptive stuff we're dealing with. Always revert back to the 4 points. You know, if you ever get a little stuck in meetings, 4 points were developed to make it super simple. Always go back to these areas that need focus on. They work very well. Stick to the structure of SMART. If you divert or lose that sense of familiarity, that feeling of safety, and also generally just keeping on track, it can be difficult. And it opened up for a free-for-all or a tell your story type. And simply just starting on time, it has a really positive or negative knock-on effect. Facilitate, not emancipate. I guess that means to set free, and really we're not really setting anyone free. We're creating an environment for them to do it themselves. So facilitate and ease the process, you know. So as you've been reminded in training, we're not there to solve people's problems. It's probably why we've got into this line of work, because we want to do that. This is a very different way of being. You know that through the training. This should give you a sense of relief. It's self-management. Always come back to that, whether things end up well for the participants or not so well. It's up to them to make that change and not you. Therefore, this at its very core should give you more confidence that you don't really need to be the expert in all of this. Again, as long as you know and develop the skills to draw and elicit change talk in someone, that's all you need to do, raising just a little bit of awareness there. Remember, the word facilitate, it literally means to ease the process. Don't let your own self or your own head get in the way of disrupting that process. Facilitate means to ease the journey for those who are in attendance, really. It's your job to facilitate, I guess, towards change and not emancipate change. It's self-management. We will do them an injustice if we do all the work for them and give them all the suggestions. So if we're there just as a guide, then the pressure's off you to have all the answers. It should be fairly simple. Practice makes perfect. And we probably hear it a lot. Well, I shouldn't say it, because none of us are perfect, not even myself. I mean, ask my wife. But practice shapes our skills. We become confident in developing and managing a positive change environment for people. If you really want to develop, look to opportunities to try out motivational skills through day-to-day. It will help you, trust me. And it just needs to be a conscious effort to the point where it becomes unconscious. Does that make sense? And just briefly touch on motivational interviewing as well. I will give some links at the end of some videos, just little videos I've found helpful around the spirit of MI, around some of the topics we've touched on, and and also video links to things where you've seen them or not, with interviews with Bill Miller, who really started motivational interviewing. So they're really helpful. Hopefully they're helpful. It should come no surprise to you, motivational interviewing skills are vitally important to develop a facilitator and a general flavour of SMART. As I said, practice is vital, and using that, the spirit of MI, helpful in all aspects of life. Really. It is a curious, empathic questioning and exploration to create a positive, open, non-judgmental space for people to explore and really just engage and raise their awareness of their situation, just by even just little stages, you know. Just making these little adjustments really for people. That's the big idea really of it. If you do not already know, as I said, there's a Q&A session which I'll give you a link for, and I've been fortunate to have some conversations with Bill Miller, name dropping here, but he said last year at a peer event we ran, MI is not about using a tool or a technique. It's just a way of being with someone, and that really struck me, because it's not a magical wand. It's just practice through a way of being, a way of communicating with someone, and helping and ease the process and directing them towards change. This helped me realise that if I apply this spirit and philosophy in my own life and the way I communicate, I will develop these skills more and more. I don't always get it right, absolutely not, but we're all in a work in progress. Again, yeah, that's my life. We're not looking at developing discrepancy, which is important, expressing empathy, amplifying ambivalence, rolling with resistance or reluctance rather than resistance, which we'll touch on in a little second, and support and self-efficacy. Especially when someone comes to the meeting for the first few times, motivation can be all over the place. It's up to you to unpack and explore their key motivating factors that has ended up bringing them there in the first place. Perhaps they may present with a completely different motivation, such as probation or parole, and begin to explore their own motivations to want to deal with that. Really is important. Just go with that. What they want to talk about is, if you start coercing specific agenda items or something, you'll be met with that reluctance. Go with them through the stages of change. Go with them at that pace. You don't want them being down here and you back down here, because you will get met with that, and it just makes it very challenging for yourselves. We can soon realise that it's not the key. What they wanted to talk about initially is you unpack and do a bit of investigative work. There could be underlying stuff that really can start to unlock the potential for change. Don't rush ahead to problem solving. It seems to be something that I see quite often. They get a little bit of motivation and they run straight to problem solving, and it doesn't work because they haven't really understood the underlying motivations, the areas of importance for that person. This is self-management. Work with the person to unpack the areas of importance for them and identify the consequences. If they don't make that change, what will impact them the greatest? We can't always presume the values are the same for everyone, and health or family might be the main areas. Help them take the steps to achieve certain goals in that area. Developing the discrepancy between what they're saying and where they want to be. Or sometimes what they don't say is sometimes just as interesting. The aim really is to help raise their awareness of their situation and for them to desire, possibly engage in a new direction. As you know, it's going to be vital to use open-ended questions that elicit change talk. Questions like, tell me what impact this is having on you. I'm curious, what do you make of this? They're in the pages in your manual, page 19, 21, 24, 25, lots of open-ended, exploring questions that we can use in MI and in SMART. It's also helpful for you as a facilitator to always be mindful of bringing the group into the discussions. This is mutual aid after all. Use the group to ask the questions that you might be limited to ask if you're facilitating properly. So, especially if you want to direct someone towards a little bit of something in discussion in an area you think might be helpful, but you're limited due to your capacity or your dynamic. I've been doing this work for a few years, and I'm sure some of you have. However, not everyone has, and we need a program that anyone can facilitate and not always rely on counselling or psychology experience. So there have been occasions when I wanted to ask someone something or suggest, or I have a good idea of an intervention that could be applied. Now, if you don't get it from them or don't get it from the group, there is another way, as a last case scenario, what I've used from time to time is, an individual in a previous group made this suggestion. What do you make of that? Again, it's like, it's not me coming up with the solutions, it's someone else, and it's putting it into that metaphorical glass bowl in the middle so that anyone can choose what they want to choose, and that's that self-control, self-management. Motivational interviewing is directive in essence, but they have to get to that result themselves. If we intervene too much, then we get met with reluctance, because the philosophy of SMART is being self-management. We found, as you may know, that intrinsic motivation is vital to help them identify the reasons for change. Developing this using the experience they have and also the experience from the peers in the group are most powerful in regards to developing and eliciting change. That's not to say that extrinsic motivations don't play a part in all this, but they still need to identify that that's important to them. It's not going to be enough. They try practicing open-ended questions, but reflecting ambivalence back, letting participants sit with discrepancy for a while. Sometimes silence is okay, and you do not always rush to fill the gaps. Uncomfortable silence is sometimes very powerful. Remember, when exploring with anyone the reasons for change, it's about asking them the correct questions. Questions that help gain and develop some awareness and understanding into the impacts of continuing or the benefits of change if they make them. Questions, I guess, such as, tell me what ways you're concerned about your behaviour. How do you see it impacting your life if you don't make this change? How do you see, unpacking with them, trying to identify, I guess, the area of importance, the number one concern for them, if they do or don't make adequate steps to change that. Using tools like cost benefits, a good tool, line of questioning and exploring. Also, don't forget rating scales, a good indicator and tool to help understand where someone is and they'd like to be. The most common rating scale really tends, for me, either how ready are you to make this change, how important is this change for you. But one I probably use the most is the confidence scale. Good to understand where someone's at in regards to that plan that they've said they wanted to do. Asking them questions. If someone says I'm a 5 out of 10 for that plan, I want them to have a better chance than 50-50 leaving today. So what can you do? One little thing to make that a 6 or a 7. It helps them get thinking about whether they need to realign that plan altogether and do a different plan to make it more successful, or whether they think of strategies that they can apply. Again, if they said that 5 out of 10, you can ask them, why are you not a 1? Why are you not a 2? In that way, as you may know, helps elicit the strengths and the resources that I've actually done it before, or such and such did it this way and I think I could do the same. It gets them really thinking about it. I'd hope that they'd walk away with a plan that's a 7, 8 or a 9 out of 10. No one's 10 out of 10, but as long as they're safe in trying to give that plan a go, it's called dignity of risk. I'll create an environment for you to come up with that plan. If it's safe enough for you to go out and test it, even though I'm feeling it's not going to be successful, I'm not one to judge, go out and give it a go as long as you're safe and you have the dignity of taking that risk. If you find you're met with resistance or reluctance to change, then I ask myself one question: what have I done to create this reluctance in this person? Bill Miller recently stated that resistance is more often than not doesn't come from the client, but mostly created by the therapist, and that really sat with me for some time, and I struggle with it sometimes. But if I'm met with reluctance, I try and backtrack, and at times bring light to I've said or done something to cause that. So it's about backing up. Be honest, just apologise with them. Sorry, I didn't mean to, get you into that space. But can we backtrack or reframe the question a little bit, or take it at your step? I've at times spent some time on building motivation only for it to take many steps back all of a sudden and not actually get to a plan until next week, that's okay. Don't rush it. What's the point in rushing it and it not being successful? Remember, motivational interview, it takes time, it needs practice. Try applying it to all aspects of life, and as you communicate, it'll become easier. If you've done little courses on it or you've got some information on it, consciously go out tonight or tomorrow at your dinner table with your family or friends or something and start applying some of that open question and that reframe and just getting used to it becoming something that you just do on a day-to-day basis. See, there's a link to the Bill Miller interview at the end and the little video around the spirit of MI. It really looks at the devil and the angel on your shoulder, but looking past that concept, it's about positive and maladaptive thoughts that people can have and the processes that can be challenging. So I was just looking at the spirit of MI, as I said, some of them, one behind of my slides, apologies for that. So looking at using tools effectively, I mean, we all know those tools. You may be aware of the types of tools that we use in CBT and SMART. Always have them in your arsenal. This will help you gain confidence if you can call upon them at any time that seems appropriate. Cost benefits, as you know, helpful to build and maintain motivation. This can be done anytime through a journey and a stage of change. More than likely it will be looking at the impacts or the benefits of change, the harmful behaviour in the beginning, but also can be used later on when someone's journeying through that maintenance stage. Just as important. That's why we say building and maintaining motivation, just as important to everybody. Excuse me. Again, the cost benefits can be done in any general conversation. Like, how many times have you sat deciding to go to a new job or to move house or something? You look at the pros and cons. We just want to do this automatically and not even consciously sometimes, and that's what we're trying to encourage people to do. For example, I guess might want to ask questions even in groups like, John, you said you were having issues with alcohol. Can you tell me how it's impacting your life? That's one of the first questions you ask at check-in for someone new. It's just straight into cost benefits, really. Looking at consequences, etc., etc. The ABC tools, you should remember an ABC of CBT. I like the acronyms in psychology. This is a good tool to identify the triggers, the events, the certain responses to these stimulus or to these antecedents. And I tend to use this when reflecting probably on a past event, helping participants explore the cognitive process they're experiencing in the midst of the event. This then helps aid and raise awareness in ways that they can challenge their own thinking the next time they're faced with that, or reshape another outcome if this antecedent or the activating event was to occur again. Again, this can be done through conversation, but can be done on a whiteboard. Now, as I said in training, be mindful of ever going to the whiteboard, because as soon as I get a pen and go up onto the board, I'm changing the shift, the dynamic of what my role is. I have done it probably in 2 years, probably 4 times, but it's for very specific reasons. I do find sometimes when I want to go to the whiteboard, or people I've worked with to go to the whiteboard in the past, it's more about them not feeling confident about what they're doing, and it's just a bit of a kind of go-to. So just be mindful. It can be useful. Some people do, but be very sparingly when you do that. As I mentioned earlier, rating scales are a really important tool to unpack motivation and identifying progress. I don't really feel like I need to go over them again. Playing it forward or looking back types of questions as well, really key. For example, what will things in these areas look like for you if you don't make this change? Help them think about the future, but don't leave them hanging out there, because whether it's positive or a negative consequence in the future, it can be overwhelming. This is why we always work in the present. Always come back to the present. Don't get caught up too far ahead. It can be a scary place with all the changes some people might need to make. And looking back, again, is about drawing on resources. We know that we shouldn't get into trauma mode or hearing someone's story, but people are on tape recording sometimes. They want to express that stuff and they think it's the forum for it, but unfortunately it's not. If you want to go to counselling or other stuff, then that's fine. I think that's to be encouraged. But if you're looking back, it's about what experiences or what ways you've done that in the past or what didn't work, and bring it again back into the present. It's really important to always keep coming back into the present day, because all we can really do is respond to these emotions and to these thoughts and to these memories in a different way. That's all we can do. We can't change the past or even control a lot of the future, really. Craving diaries, alcohol diaries, alcohol or drug diaries is about understanding control, what my levels are and where I need to be. These activities are normally printed off on the table somewhere. As I say, you can take away, they're in the manuals that people can buy. The triggers, times a day, the intensities of cravings, these can all be done through conversation anyway. Thinking about the certain times a day, the intensities, the craving, ways to counteract them more positively, getting people to talk about them is going to be key. Use of behaviour diaries can be helpful to explore through conversation. As I said, it's good to ascertain what levels a person wants to achieve. Let's say they're drinking or want to gain control. It's probably the only time we'll ask levels or amounts. It's inappropriate to ask people amounts, because it doesn't matter how much people drink, whether it's 2 glasses or 20 glasses, it's the impact it's having on them. And again, we're not about the substance, we're about the behaviour. But if people want to know what control is, they need to know how much they're drinking and what that control looks like. The cognitive triangle, probably something that I consistently have up on the board. I often write on the board alongside the group agreements. I often refer this through discussion and help people identify the process around thoughts, feelings, and behaviours, a little like the ABC tool, but it can be an easier way to guide conversations sometimes, and just have another visual representation on the board. Guiding that conversation, having that visual representation, and just helping people understand and have an awareness around the maladaptive processes. Helping them identify triggers and thoughts that develop as a result of I guess, those triggers or those those activating events that people experience through the 7 days. But remember, look, tools are just tools. They should not replace positive connection and rapport with someone or exemplify empathic listening. Empathic listening supersedes all tools or activities. If you cannot build a connection with someone, then no technique or tool is going to work. The best way to develop this quickly is to show empathy and listen to what they're saying. Remembering names, details are always helpful, and try putting yourself in their shoes. It's really what empathy is. I want to journey through this. I want to understand. I want to stand shoulder to shoulder to you and figure this out with you. Again, when it comes back to the tools, and you all know them, they're all in the manuals. As in program knowledge, the use of these tools or having an instinct of when to use these becomes second nature the more you do it. So it is a case of that. I'm sure anyone that runs groups, the first few months would have felt horrible. But it's more about our perception, and it's not so much about the perception of what the participants are experiencing. Looking at assertive communication, we'll work through here, we're running through time, but I think a big part of managing groups comes through our own confidence in ourselves, and sometimes our own baggage we bring. How we relate to people and our own experiences, for me, is definitely shapes our ability to be assertive. It's that core beliefs of the lens that we see life through. This can be developed though. Assertive communication shapes, assertive communication is key not only to group running, but your day-to-day work and life. I come across so many people in training that I find hard to manage conflict or share or express their own needs or the needs of the group. Being assertive is just that. It's about expressing your own needs or the needs of the group while respecting others. As a facilitator, you're the one guiding the group. Yes, it's mutual aid, but they're also there. You're there to protect the group and those within it. You may have to stand up for someone else's rights within the group and manage the dynamics of the group. I guess looking at the benefits of assertive communication. What is it? I mean, we all know it. We've all heard it before. We've done courses in it, but It's the ability to express positive and negative ideas in an open, honest, direct way. It recognises our rights while respecting others, as we've said. It allows us to take responsibility for ourselves and our actions without judging or blaming other people. And it allows us to constructively confront and find a mutually satisfying solution where conflict exists. So why use it? All of us use assertive behaviour at times. Quite often when we feel vulnerable or unsure of ourselves, we may resort to submissiveness or manipulative, aggressive behaviour. Yet being trained in assertive communication actually increases the appropriate use of this sort of behaviour and enables us to swap old behavioural patterns for a more positive approach to life. And I found that changing my response to others, be that of work colleagues, clients, or my own family, can be quite exciting and quite stimulating. There are advantages, as we've said on the screen here, but there are also disadvantages of assertiveness. It's not appropriate all the time. Some people may or may not approve of your sudden assertive skills. Also, having a healthy regard for another person's right means that you won't always get what you want. You may also find out that you were wrong about a certain viewpoint that you held, but most importantly, as mentioned earlier, it involves the risk of that others may not understand and therefore not accept that style of communication because it's something very different than what you may have been experiencing at first. But again, if you let it slide and let those boundaries slide straight away, it makes it more difficult to get back on track. But we'll touch on boundaries very shortly. It's definitely not a lifestyle set of communication. It's not always appropriate all the time, but it's better than being aggressive. Just touching on, before we get to this stage, look, we all know, eye contact, body language, posture, congruent body language will improve the messages you're getting. The voice, the level, content, the timing, using I statements, those types of things. And honestly, I just find humour sometimes really beneficial. If I want to pull someone up on something, I do it in a bit of a joke, but don't be joking all the time because people don't always take it seriously. So looking at some of the techniques around assertive communication, behavioural rehearsal, which is literally practicing how you want to look and sound. You may want to use I statements. You can sit and practice this stuff in the mirror. I know I've done it for interviews and things, and how I come across in my body language. I've watched myself on video doing sessions, and sometimes it's cringing to watch me do certain things and think, what kind of message am I giving off? Repeated assertion, it's about that broken record, really. I'm going to keep repeating this and I'm going to keep going over it. This assertive technique allows you to feel comfortable by ignoring manipulative verbal side traps, argumentative baiting, irrelevant logic while sticking to your viewpoint. To most effectively use this assertive technique uses calm repetition and saying what you want and staying focused on the issue. You'll find there's no need to rehearse this technique as such. You don't need to hype yourself up really to repeat, I guess, and assert yourself in that way. Fogging, someone looked into this technique, allows you to receive criticism comfortably without getting anxious or defensive. For example, I agree that there are probably times that I don't give you the answers to your questions. However, let's hear from the group. You may be asked questions directly that want to elicit a test from you about your knowledge or about your experience, but it's about kind of fogging that and a bit deflecting it, really. Negative inquiry, this assertive technique seeks out criticism about yourself and close relationships by prompting the expression of honest, negative feelings to improve communication. To use it effectively, you need to listen to critical comments, clarify your understanding of those criticisms, and use the information to be helpful. So an example might be, so you think and believe that I'm not interested in what you're saying. It's about reflecting on what you're hearing back and trying to use it to gain a more understanding in that situation from them. Negative assertion. This assertive technique lets you look more comfortably at negatives in your own behaviour or personality without feeling defensive or anxious. This also reduces your critics' hostility, really. You should accept your errors, your faults, but not apologise. Instead, tentatively and sympathetically agree with hostile criticism of your negative qualities. Example could be, yes, you're right, I don't always listen closely to what you have to say, it's just about being transparent and honest with people as well. And one of them is just about workable compromise. When you feel that your self-respect is not in question, consider a workable compromise with another person. You can always bargain for your material goals unless compromise affects personal feelings of self-respect or the group's. There can be no compromise. An example of assertive technique could be, I understand that you have a need to talk. I need to finish what I'm doing or what I'm saying first. So what about in half an hour? Well, probably don't have time in a group, but can we come back to that in a few minutes? You might want to say. Look, in conclusion, assertive communication, it's a useful communication tool. Its application is contextual. It's not appropriate to use in all situations. And remember, your sudden use of assertiveness may be perceived as an act of aggression. There's also no guarantee of success, even when you're using assertive communication styles appropriately. A quote from W.W. Zeek said, "Nothing on earth can stop the individual with the right mental attitude from achieving their goal, but nothing on earth can help the individual with the wrong mental attitude as well." When you match consumer psychology with effective communication styles, you get a powerful combination. Setting strong boundaries. Look, I'm going to run out of time here. I want to get into Josette's Q&A session, so I'm going to quickly go through some of this. Yes, it may come under assertiveness, so I guess forgive me if we don't cover some similar stuff, but I reckon most that find it hard in general life, sometimes it's about not being assertive enough and setting proper boundaries, and those boundaries get a little bit blurred. Of course, it's important to have flexibility. However, I find that we're consistent and firm but fair, and this allows those who are attending these groups to feel comfortable and safe and then explore what they need to. We do not want to be too militant with it and not display empathy or understanding. As I said, I find humour sometimes disarming. Setting the group agreements in the meeting, or should I say the participants setting them, they have buy-in to the group, and I refer to them as agreements, not the facilitators' agreements. They're your agreements, the group's agreements. It may have been my feelings not to be too hard on the group over a specific thing, and I might let it slide for a little bit, but the more you do that, the more you do blur the boundaries, and it can make a bit of a rod for your own back. I'll give an example. So it's a very small, petty thing, but I was in a meeting where someone just got up for a coffee and started rattling the teaspoon constantly while we're having this discussion. And they finished, I gave them a little look, they came back over, but next week, rather than highlighting that person and making them feel shame or guilt in the midst of that, but I just highlighted it the following week. I said, look, following week I said, look, be mindful of the group agreements, guys, getting up, make coffees, teas, drinks, whatever, go to the toilet and things, just limit the destruction bit. I probably only really allow the toilet break more than anything. Anything else, people are going to get up and do their own thing. They probably need to go away and do that, take their phone call, come back next week, or get your teas and coffees before the meeting starts. It's not difficult, but it can be really disrespectful. You're hearing the tick, 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 tick. It's like, remember, everything we do in SMART, the SMART meeting should exemplify the things that we're helping those attend to develop themselves. Time management, respect, confidentiality, non-judgment, all the general disciplines that show what the participants are trying to achieve and develop in their own lives. Practice setting stronger boundaries in your own life. I'm sure you can even think of one particular situation that you're probably not setting good boundaries in. We all need good boundaries. They're not in a negative way, as long as they're fair. I find once you set them, stay consistent, and people come to accept them, and this gives good structure, safety, and reliability. I did send out to a lot of facilitators this traffic light analogy, and you may have seen it before. This is just a visual representation of the flexibilities of a facilitator in these certain areas. This can also be used in regards to setting boundaries in your own meetings as well. But looking at the red area, it's around IP, it's around brand, it's around the model. these things shouldn't ever change. You know, and every single SMART meeting you go to, if people are sticking to the agreement, sticking to the philosophy, sticking to the structure and the times and the 4 points, everyone will see this and be familiar and feel safe and know that it's reliable and trustworthy. The orange area, there's going to be things that you have ideas in, the implementation of new tools or new theories. Consult us. We're an open organisation to want to develop further, to pass this stuff through the Research Advisory Committee, get these new ideas and adapt and change to what's working, what doesn't work. And then there are going to be things in the green area where you just don't need to consult anyone really, just make the decision, fly by the seat of your pants really, make the decision right there and then. There's no significant consequence to what we're doing, to the philosophy, to the structure, any of those main points. So I guess in summary, some of the important tips, be on time. How can you expect people to self-manage that if we don't even start our meeting on time or finish on time? Run on time, stick to the agreements, use them to your benefit, to draw upon, to highlight some things that are going on. It's really important to stick to the structure and be assertive and just manage your group. For the most of the time, we get so caught up in our own head that we just lose track of some of these basic things. You're the one that sets the tone for the meeting, and you may be one of the only people in that participant's life that actually exercises good disciplines, exercises good assertiveness and positive, healthy boundaries. And if we don't manage them ourselves, then how can we expect participants to use those skills in their very own life if we're not a good example for ourselves? And I'm trying to be harsh, but it's really the only way to start to learn to develop those stuff is really putting it into practice and trying it out. Like, I'm mindful of time. It's gone away from us really quickly. There's so much more I'd love to spend time into this and unpack some of it. But what I want to do now is really just briefly go into a little session, a Q&A session for the rest of the minutes. I'm just having a look at some of the questions. There really isn't a lot of questions being posed to Josette. There is maybe one from Teresa King, but we'll go into that. And I've got some hopefully get some insights around some challenges that we've heard recently come out of the groups. Excuse me. So I'm just going to bring Josette on to the invite her onto the webcam and onto audio. So, hi Josette, how are you?
Good, good, good. Hi everybody.
Yeah, welcome. Look, just maybe in the next 10 minutes or so, we're hoping just to go through a bit of a, well, Q&A. There's not a lot of questions come through at this stage, but I'll get through a couple of them. And then there was some topics that came through from facilitators recently around some challenges that they're finding and some inconsistencies. So maybe get your insights onto that. So having a look through here, the comments. Teresa King says, we're thinking of running 1 hour instead of 90-minute group due to resources. What do you think of that?
Well, I replied to Teresa and I said that's fine because there are groups that do run for 60 minutes. I've noticed, was it Kevin, has 3 to 6 people. You don't want to drag the group on for 90 minutes. I have groups where I've had 3 people and we've finished in 45 minutes because we've got through everybody's agenda items, we've used the tools, everybody's got a plan, so there's no need to prolong it, if you like. That said, I've run a group for 3 people and it's gone the whole 90 minutes just because of the flow and the conversation. So the time really is dependent on you as the facilitator, that you've sort of ticked all the boxes, that everybody's been heard and everybody's formulated their plan for the week.
Absolutely, and I think, to feeding on from Teresa, yes, there are groups that run for 60 minutes, but you've really always got to manage your time effectively, and if you end up having 8 or 10 people in a 60-minute meeting, it just makes it a lot more tricky, doesn't it?
Yes, so I wouldn't recommend a 60-minute group if you're having 8 or 10, 12 people in your group, because you're really just going to be checking in and checking out with not much substance in between.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'll keep an eye out on some questions coming through. Please post some questions. This is your opportunity. But some of the topics that came through is, and I guess I will just go through them, and you give your experience about how you manage these, because these are things around assertive communication, ways of managing your group. So one of them was time management is a constant for one of our facilitators, particularly finishing on time. So just briefly about time management.
Well, the first thing is see how many people are in your group. You're going to see that straight away. So, as I say, not everybody needs equal time. You want people to have equal time in the group, but for some people that have been coming for a while and they're really maintaining, they don't need a lot of time, but perhaps new people do need more time, and you will spend more time with them because you'll be showing them the tools, demonstrating them, and so forth. What you don't want to do is that you say if you've got 6 people, that you've spent so much time on the first 4 people that you've got 2 minutes each for the last 2. So that's not fair to the other 2 people. So you just always got to be mindful, keep your eye on the clock all the time, that people.
Sorry? Having a clock available so that you know exactly, like for me, I'm always, right, I've spent 10 minutes on checking now. Now I've got 5 minutes at the end, I've got 65, 75 minutes in the middle, and I'm constantly segmenting, I guess, some time. Not that I'm saying, right, you've got 10 minutes, go. You've got 10 minutes, go. But as you say, you got to be flexible. And I've spent 10 minutes here now. The next person's been here for many months. I spend 2 minutes and there's nothing. So I save time, and I'm just trying to be this kind of flexibility through the time. So,
and part of this is the facilitation skills as well, that you're not going to allow people to go on and on and on and not, I shouldn't say shut them down, but bring them back on track, that they've sort of had their time and they're not just rambling on for the sake of rambling.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And Anthony's said there he's just lost his participants manual. Yeah, look, Anthony, all the worksheets are on our website and the resources. You could purchase the participants manual. Possibly we can source you another facilitators manual if it's really essential. Look, most of the things are available on the participants manual. It will strike a chord with you, and the resources are available on our website.
And also let the participants know as well that they're on the website, because they can download them themselves as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is not secret. We want them to be equipped so they never come back.
That's right.
The question was there, how do you manage different participants each week? Every week I have a different people, and we don't have regular participants from the previous week. Which is interesting, Erica, because the majority across Australia, 81% return attendees. So your meeting is a bit of an anomaly if that's the case.
I think you just treat it like any other group. You follow the whole format, use the tools with people. And I would, if that was happening all the time, I would possibly ask people, is their intention to come back next week, and what do they hope to get out of? And that's one of the questions for new people. What are you hoping to get out of coming to Smart Recovery? So that's what you want to hear. You want to get that feedback that I'm coming to Smart Recovery because I want some tools on how to manage my anxiety during the day so I don't go home and drink all night as soon as I get home. So that's not going to be a one-off session. That's going to be coming back a few times. So I think if you ask that question, it gives them more time to think, well, why actually am I coming to these groups?
Yeah. So look, I'm looking at some of the other topics that came through. I'm going to just rattle through a few of them because a lot of them are about sticking to the program and about boundaries and assertiveness, the stuff that we've talked about. So some of the things were clients coming in and out of the group once it started, some of them disclosing personal or irrelevant information, facilitators discussing potentially confidential information in the room, staying on task, overemphasizing or praising good behavior, not following the format, not supporting problem solving. What are your kind of thoughts around some of these things? I mean, the things we've just talked about, but just in general, you know, around knowing the program, applying the tools, and around assertive communication and boundary setting.
I'm also, Dan, just mindful of the time. So Emma, I'll just answer Emma's questions before I go back to those things. But this happens at a few different agencies where people go on a roster to be the SMART Recovery Facilitators, which is not ideal. But we and you probably have no control over that. So you've got to work with what you've got. But it's not really that important to know if people have achieved their 7-day plan or their goal, whatever you want to call it, because during check-in, if you ask people how your last week has gone, if they say it's gone well, that usually indicates that they've achieved their plan, or it may not be the exact plan that they set out for themselves, but they may have done something that's going in the right direction. When people say, oh, I've had a terrible week, it's been awful, da-di-da-di-da, usually indicates that they haven't carried out their plan or things haven't worked for them. So then you'll just continue on from that. So you don't really need to know exactly all the intricacies of the plan, but what got in the way of them not being able to achieve their plan, what would they do differently next time, and if they did have a good week, why was it a good week? What made it a good week for them? And that's what the rest of the group wants to hear, the strategies that they put into place to make it a good week. So we don't need to be too hung up about the actual plan that, you know, I'm going to see my GP on Thursday. But we want to know that, no, that didn't happen, or I didn't go to the doctor, but I made an appointment to go the following week, whatever it is. So it's really seeing.
I find just like every week you ask people how their plan went, you're creating an environment that can be quite shameful or quite guilty, than the accountability around it. But if I ask, how was your last 7 days, I'm inviting them into a space to share that. But again, that's them self-managing the decision of what they share and what they don't. Because I wouldn't want people keep coming back, oh, he's going to ask me about my plan and I didn't do it, and I don't want to go there, or they're going to feel like I'm a failure because I keep, going round and round and round. But helping them, how was your last 7 days? What do you want to talk about today? Helps them take control of it again, doesn't it?
No, I totally agree with that. And it takes I think, a bit of the shame and stigma away, because it sort of works both ways, that people come back to Smart Recovery because they've announced to the group they're going to do whatever, and it's making themselves accountable. So they like to come back and say, yes, I did actually do it. On the other hand, it's sometimes they've put it out there and they're too ashamed to come back to the group because they haven't carried through the plan, and we don't want that either. Anthony, I'm just looking at your question there about the online. What I suggest is that to get in contact with Dan, or Dan can get in contact with you, because he is going to be working with the online community. So I suggest that's what you do.
Thank you. So yeah, I'll always put out, I did put an email out to all facilitators about their interest in that a few months ago, and we're developing that platform more and more. So always interested in that. We currently have 4 meetings running online, and we're looking to develop more. So that my email is at the bottom of the PowerPoint when we get there. But just briefly, I guess maybe a couple of minutes, Josette, what would be your tip? When you were starting out, all those years ago in St. Vincent's Hospital, how did you develop your own confidence, and what can help people in those early stages?
I think when I first started, which was actually the first bulletin administrator ever, I had the manual, and I walked through the manual just all the way through, and then when I did that a few times, I became more confident. As you said earlier, I knew the material backwards, and the more you do it, the more you learn about the materials, the more you realise how you can use it in different ways, the questions to ask, those sorts of things. So I'd say confidence really comes through just practicing. That's all it is, yes. And
there's nothing new here, and you might not like the result at the end of this webinar, but go out and give it a go. The more you do it, the more familiar you get with something. I am mindful of...
well, just really starting out and you really are very nervous, tell the group that, you know, you're new to this, you're starting out as well, and people will be supportive of that, because if they're there for the right reasons, wanting help and your help and whatever, then they will see that everybody does start new at some point in time. So we've all been newbies, and we've
just briefly before we finish up, I know Oscar come in late there, but he's wanting to know, he's running the groups in prisons. How do you modify the next 7 days thing when it's, you know, they might not be getting released or not much happening in the next 7 days?
Well, I think in the prison the problem is they focus too much on almost relapse prevention. And SMART, yes, that of course is involved, but this is a behavioural change program. So we're not talking about their drug use that they're supposedly not, you know, doing in prison, but it's really about their behaviour of what's gone on during the week. So it might be, I was very angry this week with the officer because he told me to get off the phone, and I was only on there for 5 minutes and we're all allowed 10 minutes. So I'm really angry about that. So that is what you would talk about. How are you going to manage your anger around that? Because all these behaviours, if they don't get them sorted out now, when they leave prison, the slightest thing that goes wrong, they'll go back to using drugs again, because they haven't really learned how to manage those uncomfortable feelings. So it's absolutely focusing on the behaviour and not on the substance.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are a lot of challenges in prison that you've got to overcome and respond to positively, you know, and you've got to learn different ways of doing that, especially in that intensity there. So thank you, Josette. I'm mindful of the time, and I've just clicked on this slide here, folks, if you can see it. I think I'm still sharing my screen. Webinars that we've got up and running through the next year, really would love for you to engage in them. Just keep an eye on the website, keep an eye on any emails that come through. And as Martin Luther King says, it's just small steps. As long as you're moving forward, you're always going to develop and always going to learn. I'll just, what I'll do is I'll just briefly copy and paste these onto the chat around the videos that I spoke of. I really appreciate everyone's input, or Josette's input, and everyone attending. I'm just going to try and do it like this, so it'll be easier to do it this way. Forgive me for popping out into this note. If everyone, you can attend, check out some of these links to some of the videos I was talking to earlier. But if any of you need further support, as I've always said, our door's really open. Myself or Josette or anyone at head office, it's our job to help support you guys, and we can create webinars, we can create support meetings and forums and all these different things that we have, but it's up to you to reach out and to use them. The data collection that we have has, do you require support? And for the most people, click it by accident. So if people are out there wanting to get some insight into managing these things better, then contact me anytime. Feel free to do that. So I appreciate everyone attending, and Josette, again, thank you for some of your insights, and we'll hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.